Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today, I know we haven't done a Jurassic World Evolution 2 video in a hot minute because of issues with modding, but as you can see here, we're at it again for the release of the new Late Cretaceous Pack for Jurassic World Evolution 2. So this covers 4 animals from the Late Cretaceous that we'll get into, and really cool animals, great selection I think. Pretty interesting, so we're going to get stuck into that today. So we're going to be starting off with the pterosaurs. So we're going to be starting off here with Barbaridactylus. If you guys know Prehistoric Planet, you'll know these guys. So let's see if we can find one hanging around somewhere that we can have a look at. Okay, here we are. Here's a nice image of one. So this is Barbaridactylus. So Barbaridactylus is a nyctosaurid pterosaur, so a relative of animals such as Nyctosaurus. If you guys know your pterosaurs, that's a very famous one. These guys are from a little bit later in the Cretaceous, though. These guys are from the Maastrichtian, or the latest Cretaceous. And they were only published in 2018 by Nicholas R. Longrich, David M. Martel, and Brian Anders, who in the same publication actually described 2 other nyctosaurids from the same basin in Morocco, which is the Ouled Abdon Basin, I believe, Alacone and Simnagura. And the full scientific name of Barbaridactylus is Barbaridactylus grandis. So this specimen, and all the specimens known, were recovered from a 3-year dig, which unearthed about 200 or so pterosaur specimens, which is pretty cool. And the specimen that's the type contains its right femur, left radius, ulnar humerus, and the scapulocoracoid, so pretty much the shoulder bones, and a partial mandible. And it's named after the Barbary coast of North Africa, where its name is Barbaridactylus, so basically the Barbary finger. And so Barbaridactylus, so Barbary finger is basically, and grandis means great in Latin, so a pretty interesting animal. Barbaridactylus is actually pretty large for a nyctosaurid. These guys have a humerus length of about 22 centimeters long, so that estimates the wingspan to be about 4 meters or 13 feet long, so a bit bigger than like a wandering albatross, and about 4 kilograms. And you can see here they've got these large upcurving jaws, though in here it's not reconstructed right, to be honest. Large upward curving jaws like other nyctosaurids, and they have short cervical vertebrae, which is actually quite similar to the pteranodontids, which is pretty interesting. And they've got some other kind of features that distinguish them from other nyctosaurids and other pterosaurs, which is pretty interesting. So these guys, as I mentioned, these guys are a type of nyctosaurids. They are related to things like Nyctosaurus, Vulgar Draco, and those kind of animals. And in terms of their ecology, as I mentioned, they're from the Upper Maastrichtian, and they would have been found in the Oued Abdon Basin in northern Morocco. And this formation has been, does not belong to a formation, is divided into creches, which Barbaridactylus was found in Creche 3. And this layer dates to about the last million years or so of the Mesozoic, about a million years or so before the KT extinction. And this actually lived in a very, very rich habitat, so this would live near the coast. A large variety of marine life has actually been found in this region. That includes sharks and bony fish, turtles, plesiosaurs and mosasaurs. There are a couple fragmentary dinosaurs from the formation, including a sauropod and a balisaur. And the main thing that's the claim of fame of this formation is the pterosaurs. So this, if you guys have watched Prehistoric Planet, this features that formation pretty heavily. This has got Draco, and also Barbaridactylus, Alacone, Shimagura, and Draco. Those are all animals from that formation, and I think that's rather cool. So yeah, it's a pretty cool animal, if you do say so myself. Let's have a look at them flying around. In terms of accuracy, as I mentioned, there's not too much known from it, but one thing is nyctosaurids are pretty famous for is pretty much having no fingers, and they gave this guy 2 fingers, so that's wrong. Obviously, pycnofibers should be on this guy. The crest is kind of speculative. It'd be cool if they went with something a little bit more Prehistoric Planet to make it a little bit more distinct. But yeah, overall it's not too bad. There is those anatomy differences I mentioned, like the no fingers and the crest could probably be a bit different in the picnic fibers, but overall not too bad. It's got a little bit nicer texture than the other pterosaurs. But yeah, really, really awesome. So that's our first guy done. Next, we're going to move on to a sauropod. So let's have a look at the big guys here. So we've got here Alamosaurus, one everyone's kind of big favorite sauropod here. There's a wonderful big guy here. Let me just quickly make sure this guy can release as well. So we've got here Alamosaurus. Very, very interesting animal if I do say so myself. Let's have a look at you because you're a little bit prettier. I like that pretty color on them. So Alamosaurus, which is means Ojo Alamo lizard. These guys are a titanosaur sauropod. So a relative of things such as Fukulongosaurus, I believe, and Mesodonosaurus, yeah, that's it. And we'll get into their taxonomy a little bit later, but these guys are known from the single species Alamosaurus sinjuensis, which is from the latest Cretaceous period of southern North America. And this guy used to be thought of as being a lot smaller, but actually isolated vertebrae and limb bones indicate that these guys got quite big, comparable in size to lots of other large sauropods such as Argentinosaurus and Dreadnoughtus and Puertosaurus, and actually the largest known dinosaur from North America, which is pretty interesting. And there's been a variety of fossils found of these guys around kind of the late Cretaceous, around the Maastrichtian age, with a juvenile Alamosaurus actually being found only a few meters below the boundary in Texas, which actually makes it one of the last living non-avian dinosaurs, which is pretty cool. So these guys, like most of the sauropods, they're gigantic, they've got long necks and long tails. I believe the largest estimated size of these guys is about 30 meters, or about 80 tons, but most estimates put them a little bit smaller, or so basically comparable of weight with animals such as Puertosaurus and Argentinosaurus. The most recent estimates we've got is about like 26 to 30 meters, and probably about 38 to 45 tons or so. So still a really large animal, if definitely. And these guys, there's a few specimens known, but a skull has not been found. Though it's suggested that these guys would have had more similar to other dinosaurs as well. The rod-shaped teeth has been found with specimens as well. Just kind of how we know what they look like. And these guys also have foraceae on their vertebrae that are very similar to animals such as Saltosaurus and Gondwana titan, and also Ventosaurus as well, but though it's more robust. And one cool thing about these guys as well is that we have evidence of these guys having osteoderms from both its close relatives, which are Saltosaurus and things like that, but I believe we have preserved osteoderms. So this kind of look, while making it distinct in game, is actually based on real evidence, which is pretty cool. So this guy has been discovered throughout the southwestern United States. The holotype was discovered in June of 1921 by Charles Whitney Gilmore in the Ojo Alamo Formation, or the Kirkland Formation, which was from New Mexico during the Maastrichtian of the late Cretaceous, and also has been found in other places such as the Javelina Formation, Black Pigs, the North Horn Formation of Utah, places like that. And the original specimen, the holotype, or the type species you could say, was actually not named after the Alamo or in St. Antonio, Texas, or the battle that was fought here. This actually name refers to as discovering in New Mexico, and the time of its naming, actually Alamo had not yet been found in Texas. So the name is Ojo Alamo, which is a reference to the geologic formation that is found in, which is pretty interesting, and which is pretty cool. And it's led to a bit of debate as well and all that. Alamo is actually Spanish for word meaning popular, as the local species of cottonwood tree there, or subspecies technically, so which is pretty cool. Very interesting. People think, oh, Alamo, of course, but it's actually very, very different. can have a look at this guy while we're here, because I like this different color here. And you can see the pattern on this guy. So, in terms of its classification, their taxonomy's been a bit all over the place, because Titanosaurs never were really in North America until Alamosaurus right at the end. So it's people have been thinking, did these guys come from Asia and other Asian titanosaurs, or did they come from South America and descend from South American titanosaurs? So these guys are clearly a really derived member, or a really late surviving or highly developed group of Titanosauria. But its relationship, some people believe it's kind of related to Ornithischica lacauda, which is a type of sauropod from Asia, and others suggest it's related to Logostoma, which is Fucolongosaurus and Mesodontosaurus, as I mentioned before, but actually lays outside Saltosauridae. But the most recent cladistic analyses and things like that suggest that these guys are actually descended from South American titanosaurs, and they must have come up from there somehow, which is pretty cool. And yeah, these guys, in terms of their age, as I mentioned, are found between 69 and 68 million years ago from the Hamaliva Formation, and some have been found right within the KT boundaries, so they lived at that right at the end of Maastrichtian, so a very late surviving dinosaur. And fun fact as we get into the habitat and geology of the place it lived, these guys have kind of this Alamosaurus fauna as described, as they would have been kind of the Midwest or the middle parts or the southern parts of the US were kind of more open, and they would have been home to animals such as Alamosaurus and Quetzalcoatlus, which are both really awesome dinosaurs, of course. I mean, well, Quetzalcoatlus is not a dinosaur, as we all say, but these guys typically kind of lived in semi-arid inland plains, and that would have been their kind of habitat versus things like Hell Creek, which we haven't found an Alamosaurus from Hell Creek yet. And the appearance of actually this, as I mentioned, these guys came from South America, their ancestors did, and they actually appeared to achieve dominance in their environment very abruptly, and suggest that these guys may just kind of came in and then kind of took their place as the big sauropod. Though it's very possible, some people still think that they came from Asia, but it's kind of neither here nor there. But it's very likely that these guys were endemic to North America as well, and their ancestors would have had to go through there from either Asia or South America. And contemporary of these guys was a Tyrannosaurus, or very close relatives of Tyrannosaurus, lived in the southern US with these guys. Also, the Oviraptor, Ojoraptorceratops, Chronosaurus, Glyptodontopelta, Torosaurus, Ojoceratops, Bravoceratops, and also Quetzalcoatlus, which is already in the game. That would have been a contemporary of this guy. And there were also all sorts of small species of fishes, rays, amphibians, turtles, and little mammals right before the end of the Cretaceous, where the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, and these guys would have probably likely been witnessed the meteor, which is pretty sad to think about, these poor guys. But yeah, really, really awesome. If we're going to comment on the accuracy of it, obviously we haven't seen the head before, but it's very likely it would have looked much more similar to something like Argentinosaurus. I do like these spikes on here, as there's a little bit of evidence there and really makes it distinct. The feet as well is another comment. As I mentioned, these guys have very elephantine feet, but they actually should have feet that are a little bit more like fleshy horseshoes. And these guys should have 3 big claws on the back there to help dig. And these guys would have had fleshy hooves and quite a long tail as well. So that's pretty much right. Closer than a lot of the sauropods, but still needs a little bit of work to be completely accurate, but still pretty awesome to see another sauropod. It's not very often we get a big sauropod in a DLC. Last time we only got Dread, and that was in the last game. So that's pretty awesome. So, yeah, I think that's it for Dread. Now we're going to be moving on to the next dinosaur. We've got... Oh, is that the social animation? No. And these guys have a really cute... animation where they stand around. They kind of, let's see if they'll do it. I don't think they'll do it. Let's see if we can get them to do it. There we are. If you look at here, look, it's stretching like that. Isn't that cool? Let's see if we do it again. Oh no, that's not what we want. Do it again. Do it for me, pretty please. Come on, do it for me again. I want to see you do it. I'll just have to walk. There it is. You can see it stretches up like that. Isn't that cute? I love that. Just leans up and stretches up. I think that's a really cute little animation. It looks rather awesome. Obviously, you can get the pack for yourself and have a look and sort out. Look at all the cool little animations if you want. But next, we're moving on to the second animal. We've got here Australovenator, which is a really, really cool animal here. Finally, another Australian animal. So, getting quite a few Aussie representation. So, that's pretty awesome. So, let's have a look at you. So we've got here Australovenator. Let's see if we can find one in a... Here's probably a good one here. Look at you, aren't you pretty? Here's a good one. So this is Australovenator, which means southern hunter. These guys are Megaraptoran, and I'll get to what they are soon. These guys come from the Late Cretaceous, or the Cenomanian, of the Wintone Formation in Australia, which dates back to about 95 million years ago, so they still count as Late Cretaceous. These guys are also known from quite a good amount of remains. There's known from both cranial and post-cranial remains. They were described in 2009 by Scott Hocknewell and colleagues, which is pretty cool. And these guys may have actually been a close relative of animals such as Raptor. And these guys, though they may be a more derived version of Megaraptor and part of the main Megaraptoridae family itself. So that's pretty cool. So these guys, they're based on a specimen, as I mentioned, nicknamed Banjo, after Banjo Patterson, who found the sauropod Diamantinosaurus matildae at the Matilda site. And the holotype was initially described and then put in the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum of Natural History. And these include gastralia, ribs, teeth, partial forelimbs and hind limbs, things like that. So pretty much, actually pretty well known for a dinosaur. And there have been additional elements of the arm and legs and things like that of other specimens found, which is also pretty interesting. And for some time, actually, these guys were considered as the same genus as Rapata, I believe you say that. But these guys actually were found to be their own thing. There was some similarities, but they actually managed to distinguish the two taxa on a couple different things, which is pretty interesting. So these guys were kind of that medium-sized theropod range. These guys are about 6 meters or 20 feet long and weighed about 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds. These guys were a quite lightweight predator comparatively, even though they weigh half a ton. Compared to a lot of larger theropods, these guys are kind of mid-size. And they were relatively lightweight, and they've been coined the cheetah of their time by kind of Hucknall, I believe you say that name. And like other Megaraptorans, these guys would have been bipedal carnivores, as we'll get into. And as I mentioned, these guys, Megaraptorans are kind of a really cool group of dinosaurs. They're a group type of theropod, and they have these really cool adaptations for hunting. So unlike a lot of other dinosaurs, these guys have more developed forearms with large claws. Actually, as we get into the accuracy of this, I'll mention that the claws are actually kind of too small. I'd say that they're smaller than the bone claws, but they have large claws, and Australovenator itself seemed to be able to semi-pronate its hands. So they would have been able to kind of move its hands and twist them so it'd be able to kind of grab prey with its arms, and that would have been the main way it kind of killed things, which is very, very interesting. And these guys were kind of their own part of an Australian group of Megaraptorans. Megaraptorans, we don't know exactly what they're related to. It seems that these guys may be related to things such as Tyrannosaurids. The most prevailing idea at the moment, these guys are related to like Coelurosaurs. The Coelurosaurs are close relatives of that. Some people suggest they're Allosaurids. They're kind of, we don't know exactly where they fit in the dinosaur family tree, but we know that they're a theropod at least. And in terms of the paleobiology, there's actually been quite a comprehensive study on these guys, as I mentioned. And I mentioned that they could move their arms quite flexible, more similar to that of birds that are non-avian dinosaurs. So they're able to kind of extend and much more flexible with their hands, allowing them to grasp prey. They've also scans of emus to kind of reconstruct the foot of Australovenator foot to kind of test the flexibility and things like that. And it seemed these guys were able to kind of kick things as well, and they actually would have probably done a lot of kicking as well, pretty good kickers. And they actually have pathologies on their toes that may have come from kicking things, which is pretty interesting. And also, dinosaur footprints has been studying that. It's specifically a footprint that's been made in like a large clay, the Lark Quarry. There's been a lot of large, there's lots of footprints there that could have been made from both Australovenator and all sorts of other animals. And it seems that these guys may have either may have been the ones to make them, and it suggests that they may have been from Barbaridactylus as well, the large ornithopods. There's smaller ornithopods as well, and there may have been ornithopods similar to Barbaridactylus living in that formation. That's pretty interesting. So in terms of the paleobiology, the formation they were found in is in northwest of Winton, which is near the Ellesmere Station, and it was recovered from the Winton Formation, which dates back to the last Cenomanian, or about 95 million years ago. And these guys were found in a sandstone layer, so that would have been in a Billabong or Oxbow Lake deposit. And it's actually found on the same site as the animal Diamantinosaurus, which is another large sauropod, bivalves, fish, turtles, crocodiles, and plant fossils. And there would have been other sauropods and other types of dinosaurs, including Diamantinosaurus, as I mentioned, Wintona titans, another good example. There's also some unknown hypsilophodonts, or kind of small ornithopods, and chylosaurs, so that's pretty interesting as well. And the type of plants that you'd find in this formation are kind of angiosperms, gymnosperms, ginkgos, and ferns. So not too different, but the animals would have just been so weird. And in terms of accuracy, this guy is not that bad. It's very likely that Megaraptorans could have had feathers, depending how closely related to Tyrannosaurs, but basically feathers could be ancestral to all dinosaurs, so it would have been cool to give this guy feathers, considering we've just got the feathers pack, but I'm not going to complain. The face is alright, maybe it's a little bit kind of weird thing here. I kind of like the, like kind of fleshy outline of this guy, I kind of like that, but I honestly would have preferred feathers. And the arms are quite large here, but they're actually smaller than the bone core here. If you guys have seen reconstructions, sometimes these guys have large claws, and then you imagine, because often when an animal has a claw, there's often a bony core, and then there's the keratin extension, and that can make it like at least like a half longer than it already is. So there would have been some pretty huge claws on these guys, and also pretty much all the claws, all three digits would have been pretty large, pretty much. Even the first two, that would have been pretty large, and that potentially would have been used for grasping prey and things like that, and we have evidence of that. But yeah, other than that, it's all right. I'd say it's definitely a highlight of the pack. I think I quite like the look of it. Australovenator is a very cool dinosaur, and it's one that we've been wanting for a while. And we get our first Megaraptoran in the game, so that's really cool. So yeah, big fan. I do like these guys here. The feet could probably be a little bigger, but it is what it is. And yes, so now we're going to be going on to our last animal here. We're going to be going into the lagoon. So we've got here Styxosaurus. So Styxosaurus is a plesiosaur, as we'll get into, and we'll release that. Let me just quickly release the other guys here. So we got here Styxosaurus. Very interesting animal here. So Styxosaurus is a plesiosaur, a close relative of something like Alamosaurus. These guys also lived during the Campanian age of the Cretaceous period. And there's two species known. There's Styxosaurus snowy and Styxosaurus brownie. And these guys, as I mentioned, they're a large plesiosaur. They're one of the kind of elasmosaurs that lived during the late Cretaceous. And these guys have really long necks. These guys have up to 72 vertebrae in their neck, and typically it's between 60 and 72. These guys were quite a large elasmosaur as well. They had a neck length of about 5.25 meters, or about 17 feet long, and they would have reached about 10 meters or so long, or about 34 feet, and weighed about 2.3 metric tons in body mass. And then, like other plesiosaurs, these guys had sharp teeth that were quite conical, that were adapted for puncturing and holding prey rather than cutting. And they most likely also swallowed their prey whole, since they ate smaller things like small fish and squids and things like that. So basically, anything small enough to fit in their mouth, they would have eaten. Um, the holotype of these guys, Styxosaurus snowy, was actually described by S.W. Wilson, where it's got the complete skull and the 20 vertebrae. There was also a more complete specimen found in Iowa, South Dakota, that measured about 11 meters long, and was originally described as a Dalsosaurus premabolti, but it seems to be the same thing and has been synonymized with Styxosaurus snowy, so it gives us a better understanding of how it looked. And the name Styxosaurus comes from the river Styx, which is the in Greek mythology, where it kind of separated the world from the living from the world of the undead, and to travel on the river Styx would kind of take you to the afterlife, which is pretty interesting. And obviously, Saurus means reptile, so it would have been the reptile of the river Styx, pretty much. And the type specimen is also found in Hell Creek in Logan County, Kansas. And the source of the genus name is coined by Samuel Paul Wells, who described the genus in 1943. Be a pretty interesting animal here. As I mentioned, these guys were elasmosaurs. These guys, the closest living relatives would have been Elasmosaurus and Albertocnesis, I believe you say that, or Hajamasaurus as well. These guys would have been in that family and pretty derived Elasmosaurine, so really close relative of something like Elasmosaurus. Let's see if you can find a better image of. And a bit of a side note, I really like the new lagoon look, and cool that we can decorate it. It's one of the things I put in my speculation video, and I think it's rather awesome. So, in terms of its paleobiology, it would have been too different from other elasmosaurs. These guys would have been living in the ocean, feeding on small prey. They also gave birth to live young. We have relatives of other plesiosaurs that actually have quite large babies that they would have gestated in their mother's belly, and actually up to the quarter the size of their parents. So it's implied that there would have been a lot of parental care going on there, potentially even living in groups. So that's very, very interesting. And in terms of paleobiology, these guys actually do not use while most marine predators do not use gastroliths to grind food, there's a lot of specimens of Styxosaurus as well that use stones as ballast. And there's actually a specimen found in the Pereira Shale of western Kansas that has fish bones mixed with gastroliths, which could have been for digestion and maybe potential to help it be more buoyant and sink to the water column more, but that's kind of unlikely. But these Alamosaurus specimens, the weight of the gastrolith might have been like less than 1% of the animal. And while crocodiles and other animals actually use gastroliths as ballast today, it's actually likely these guys would have used them to help digest kind of fish bones and pretty much anything in their stomachs. And these guys, like most other plesiosaurs, they would have fed on small animals such as belemnites, fish, anything small enough, potentially smaller marine reptiles, basically anything they could get their mouths around. I think it's often underestimated the size of prey these guys could have been eating. They could have been eating quite large animals, considering their large jaws and tenacity. Most reptiles are not picky at all. But anyway, I want to quickly go over the thing that makes this guy cool. So let's go to quickly environment. Let's turn it into night. And you can see one of the cool things that was added to these guys is that they have glowing skins. So 3 skins, I think all the ones starting with P, they're all glowing. So bioluminescence is something that some animals have. They're obviously like deep sea animals. There's no instance of it in reptiles other than maybe like glowing bacteria on the backs of turtles. But a lot of animals, including like lots of marsupials and things like that, they have biofluorescence. So they will basically glow under certain types of light. But bioluminescence is animals making their own light. And I think this is really cool use of the Lux gene, as of course seen in a lot of seen in the Parasaurolophus as well, and they're making good use of that gene. Nice to see it in a marine animal as well, so it really accentuates kind of the glowing night of the depths and stuff like that, which I think is rather awesome. I think this guy's going to eat. Ooh, awesome. But anyway, we don't really have bioluminescence from animals like reptiles and things like that, but cool speculation, all that. And in terms of the anatomy of this guy, it's the skull's actually pretty good. I do like the skull. It's got those big teeth and things like that. I think it looks like more generic. It could be probably a little shorter, but it's not too bad. I don't get these fin things here. They could have just made the neck a little thicker and that would have been fine. I get just try to stick out from the Alamosaurus, but I personally don't like it that much. It most likely would have a quite thin neck, though they would have had large stools of blubber likely, which helped them regulate their body temperature and really round them out quite a bit. It makes them a little bit bulkier. As you can see, it's kind of like gives it a weird profile and needs to be a bit bulkier there. And I think the whole body needs to be generally a bit bulkier as well, since they would have had that blubber and large muscles and things like that. And I like the addition of this fluke here. The fluke's a little odd, but I like the addition of it nonetheless. So it is pretty cool. Maybe the more soft tissue around there. I think generally just need more like soft tissue. If you guys have seen a lot of more like updated reconstruction of plesiosaurs, they have a lot more larger fins and more like rounded profiles rather than looking more snake-like. They'd have a little bit more like a kind of leatherback turtle kind of look, a little bit more fatty and more bulky, which is very cool and is actually based on a lot of specimens as well. We have lots of soft tissue preserved from like plesiosaurs and polycotylids and things like that, so it's not something that's like weird and making up. We have pretty good idea of what soft tissue on plesiosaurs would have looked like. But yeah, pretty cool. I do like that we got to see some cool animals, and I like the new skins. Let's see if we can find the other one. So this is kind of the other one here, the other glowing skin. But yeah, I think they all came out rather wonderfully. So yeah, I'll tell you the skins that that have the glowing. So the three skins are the three ones with P: the Pirachacha, the Papanura, and the Paleophylax are all the patterns that have bioluminescence components to them, which is all pretty cool. And I think that does add something really unique to this animal and add something unique to the pack as well, though it is, of course, very speculative. But yeah, it's really awesome to see these guys hang out in the lagoons, especially with the updated designs and stuff and the new decorations that you can put at the bottom here. Really brings the lagoons to life, and I think these guys are just so awesome. So yeah, I think this would be a great place to finish up today. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified below anything. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.